Hi, I'm Tara, and welcome to Les Do Books. Email me at tara@thelesbianreview.com with any questions or comments, or come join the Facebook group, the Lesbian Review Book Club. I'm thrilled because I'm joined today by a newer lesfic author, K Aten. Her first 3 books were released this year by Regal Crest Publishing, and the latest is The Archer, which is book 2 in her Arrow of Artemis series. Kelly is here to talk about other people's books. Authors are readers too, so I'm asking her about what lesbian fiction she loves. Welcome, Kelly.
Hello. It's good to be here.
So, is there a bit of a theme to the books you're going to be talking about today?
There is. I actually review for the Lesbian Review, and the books that I enjoy and the ones that I kind of review are all of the science fiction, fantasy, dystopian, speculative fiction. So when I went through my spreadsheet, yes, I have a spreadsheet for all of my books and ratings and the author and name and everything. So I went through my spreadsheet and I specifically sorted by science fiction, fantasy, speculative, that sort of thing. So that I could come up with a list of all of my faves. So that is my theme.
That is awesome. So what's the first book that you want to talk about?
Okay, the first book is actually my very favorite lesbian fiction book of all time. It has been at the top of my list for probably 10 years. I first read it as a fan fiction in Uber, Xena and Gabrielle fan fiction, right? Xena Warrior Princess. So I've been reading that for a long time now, but I first read the story as a fan fiction, and then I also bought the giant paperback years and years ago, probably 15 years ago. You can't get it now. I apologize so for talking this up, but it's called The Growing, and it's by Susanne M. Beck and Okasha Skat'si. It's Native American. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but if she listens to this, my apologies. It's a dystopian sci-fi. It's a massive sci-fi epic, I guess, reminiscent of Isaac Asimov with his love of robots, the robot mind and their function. But it's more than just a sci-fi or dystopian novel. The basis of the book is that android fever has kind of taken over the world. People have robots in every house, functional droids that pick up everyday tasks that humans don't want to do. But it's also, there's corruption and lack of oversight, and it all happens kind of right at the beginning, and the androids take over the world. They begin a mass culling, and Kirsten King, PhD, she's a cyber scientist. She's also one of the members of President Hillary Clinton's cabinet, and she is the sole survivor. So her and her dog Asimov, they make their way kind of across the country from DC to a manufacturing plant in the middle of the Midwest, like Wyoming. She's actually technically deaf. She has implants that allow her to hear. So she doesn't have any issues, but she can turn those implants off when she wants, if she needs a break from the real world. So I thought that was it gives you an interesting perspective on her as far as her ability to hear and what it's like to be deaf.
Mm-hmm.
So she's traveling across the country to infiltrate this android-controlled factory. She wants to be able to shut them down for good, and she's the only one essentially that has the knowledge to do so. And then you kind of enter this Dakota Rivers, who is a veterinarian. She's Native American. She's also a widow, and she's a reluctant shaman. So she gets caught up with this group that's at the military base, and they go in. They want to shut down this factory. They have enough planes and bombs to drop the bombs on the factory and destroy it. So she doesn't take into account the fact that there might actually be somebody human there. And needless to say, Kirsten King, she gets out. She kind of gets rescued by this group, but she's not happy because they've kind of destroyed everything she needs to shut them down. So it's the two women kind of end up having to make a journey in the book to California in order to get to the main facility where this mad scientist essentially was located, and kind of get into the heart of all of his controls to see if they can shut everything down there. So I guess it takes all their science. It takes Dakota Rivers, medical knowledge. It takes her training. it takes her shamanism to kind of reach their goals. So it's a massive book, though. It's 652 pages. There's small print. So, and it is straight up Uber Xena Gabrielle.
It sounds fabulous, though.
It is a lot. I know some people don't like it because it might be too long for them, the people that I've talked to, but everyone I've actually recommended the book to that have gotten their hands on a copy has just loved it. So
what do you love so much about it? Like, why has it stayed at the top of your list for so long?
That's a great question. I guess we all have those books that kind of tick all of our boxes, right? Science fiction, huge one. It has like the soulmates thing, which is sappy, but there's just something about a strong emotional connection, and you can't get much stronger than that. You've got robots, you've got dystopian society, you've got magic with the shamanism, you've got epic battles with well thought out strategy, and you've got at the top of it strong, intelligent women who are all just badass, right, in their own way. You have other supporting characters in it, both men and women, but all of the supporting characters that are women are just warriors at heart, right? And they all have their own skill set that they bring into it. So the authors really did a good job putting everything together. And like I said, it is an epic. It is an undertaking if you read it. I like it because it takes me a couple of days, you know? So that might be a week or two in other people's time, but anything that keeps me busy for a while, right?
So if somebody was able to find a copy of it, like actually be able to get their hands on it, who would you recommend it to?
Anyone that grew up with a love of science fiction, whether it's lesfic or not even lesfic, people that like dystopian books, people that like books that are a lot of adventure, maybe even some military. There's a lot of military action and strategy involved in it. People that are interested in the Native American culture, because they do cover some of the rituals for the Native American culture. And I guess any of those people, dystopian, sci-fi, robots, Native American culture, military action. So it ticks a lot of boxes.
That's fantastic. What is the next book you want to talk about?
All right. Next book I want to talk about actually it's part of a series. It's the first book in the Supreme Constellations series by Brooke. It's called Protector of the Realm. Also sci-fi. This book, it introduces Commodore Ray Jacelon. She's the leader of the Gamma 6 space station. Her people apprehend a spaceship that's piloted by Kellen O'Dall. It's the beginning of a battle over a small boy that she is the protector of. And it kind of has a lot of political intrigue. It kicks off kind of this tense, almost fight over this boy. In order to stay within the protections of the Supreme Constellations, Kellen, who's very closed, standoffish, very protective of the child, she has to marry a citizen. So the more powerful the citizen, the better. The Commodore is the only one that kind of volunteered, and she actually came up with the idea, but nobody else wanted to do it. And I guess this is another one. I love space epics. I love slow burn romance that develops over time. And the writer especially, she puts a deep connection between the two characters with Kellen and Ray. And Kellen is also another complete badass. She is trained in like a super secret, like a martial art kind of thing, right? She's protecting this boy, and she's kind of his last family, so to speak. So it's just, again, it's a wonderful space epic. It has a lot of action in it. It has, the slow burn romance. And I think anybody that likes, even if you're not big on space, anybody that likes that slow burn romance and kind of not necessarily friends to lovers, but not necessarily enemies, frenemies maybe, because the Kellen O'Dall thinks that essentially everyone is out to get them, right? Everybody is the enemy. She's suspicious of everyone because her one goal is to protect this boy. So it takes a lot for her to grow to trust essentially one of the, a person of high power that could either make or break all of her goals. It's a very good book.
I actually have read this one, and I loved it. I think I read it pretty early into my lesfic reading days, and I haven't read it in a few years, and now I want to read it again because I enjoyed it so much. But I kind of wondered, because I know that she writes quite a lot of fanfic as well. Do you think this started out as a Janeway 7 of 9 fanfic?
You know, I've heard other people, because I kind of see the chatter on it, I've heard other people say similar. I've actually not read any Janeway. I didn't watch the show, so a lot of times if I don't watch the show, it's hard for me to read the fanfic. Same with the Klexa, right? I didn't watch the show at all. I know it's a huge deal, but I have a hard time just jumping into the fanfic. And then there's other shows that I have watched, like movies, and I'm like, no, I didn't see the appeal that everyone else did. So, but I have heard that this could potentially be like a Janeway 7 fanfic. I couldn't tell you for sure. I know there's a lot of books out there with the X and G, right? Xena Gabrielle. Those ones are pretty easy. But sometimes when stuff that I know was a Xena fanfic, by the time it makes it to print, they've changed some key characteristics about the characters. So it's not as easy to tell, right?
Yeah.
But if I've read it before it was published, then obviously it's easy for me. So
yeah, I
would believe that it was.
And I do think it's a good one. If you're a fan of romance and you're not usually a fan of sci-fi, it's still a good one to pick up because the romance is such a strong element in it. But also, I don't think it's overpowering, so that if you're not as much a fan of romance and you are a fan of sci-fi, like I think it actually can appeal pretty well to both groups. I
think so too. I mean, there's a lot of action. There's a lot of ass kickery going on.
Yes.
So, and I think it would appeal all the way around, you know, whether you're more of one or more of the other. I think it would appeal across. It definitely crosses boundaries.
Mm-hmm. So what's the next book you have for us?
All right. Number 3 is one. And by the way, these books that I'm reading they are my favorites, obviously, but they're all books I have read numerous times. I have probably read The Growing at least 10 times. And that's saying a lot when it's almost 700 pages of small print. Protector of the Realm, I've read, a handful of times. The next one is called Broken Wings by L.J. Baker. That's a fantasy. I've read that one a handful of times. It's about Rye Woods and her little sister are fairy immigrants who kind of just barely scrape by every day. They're hiding their true race from those around them. They escaped, I guess, fairy land and persecution. So obviously, because they're essentially undocumented immigrants, and it's funny that I'm talking about this now because it's kind of more relevant to, political stuff that's going on. But I probably will go back and read it again just because of that. But they're kind of undocumented. They can't tell anybody, where they're from and who they are. They have to hide themselves. Rye has her wings constantly bound to her body, so nobody could tell that she has wings. They are from an ultra-conservative, almost like a cult-like family and area, right? So Rye would be executed if she returns, and she would never risk letting her sister fall back into the hands of the harsh life that they had. So she's working multiple jobs to afford her sister's schooling. She hides who she is. Her sister hasn't yet gotten her wings, but she's been instructed to also hide who she is. So things get kind of complicated when Rye meets a dryad, a beautiful dryad named Flora With. Flora discovers Rye's talent with cooking, and she hires her to cater a private dinner, and it kind of takes off from there. Over the course of their acquaintance, they discover they have feelings for each other, but of course, there's always this like, oh, I'm afraid they'll find out my secret, and so, she kind of wants to run from Flora. Once their true identities are discovered, the people from Fairy come in and they try to take them back for punishment. And then it kind of goes into all of the abuse that Rye suffered while she lived in this cult. And the abuse all stems simply from the fact that same-sex pairings were discouraged within Fairy. So all of this abuse was because of, same-sex pairing, because of how she is, and she refused to renounce, I guess, who she is. So, and she doesn't want her sister to live in that kind of world. So the Fairy discovers her identity is discovered, and Fairy people, representatives from Fairy and her family try to come and take them back. And so she's fighting for political asylum from them. And luckily enough, she has a very rich dryad who is completely in love with her, who is also helping. So it's a really good, again, slow burn romance. If you like fantasy, L.J. Baker does an amazing job of just painting this world. I like stories with mythological creatures, with magic. It's richly colored and crafted. Yeah, it's kind of that conservatives hate the gays theme, but it's a really unfamiliar twist because of the setting that L.J. Baker has. I also love to cook, so apparently, even if I have no idea what the characters are cooking with, it still's like, oh, that sounds delicious. I don't know what pine cone, sweet and sour pine cone with floopy root is or whatever, but like I like to cook, so I like books that kind of have that kind of thing in there too. The author just does a great job, and again, it ticks a lot of boxes for me. So,
you said it's a romance, so I feel like I probably know the answer, but before I seek out this book, because it sounds really interesting, does it have a happy ending?
It does have a happy ending, because I will say that as a reader and as an author, I don't mind some struggle. I don't like angst inserted for angst. I don't like drama inserted for drama, right? I don't like sex inserted for sex, just to like fill some quota. However, even if there's like some angst and some drama and some action, I do like a happy ending. Mm-hmm. It's kind of very important for me, because reading for me is an escape, and I don't want to be sad when I'm done.
I feel exactly the same way. It's not that I don't want to be challenged by what I'm reading, because I do, but the world is a pretty bleak place right now, so I do want to be entertained.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly it. And even if the world isn't the way it is right now, it's still a bleak place for a lot of people. There are a lot of people that don't know who they are, that know who they are and are afraid to say. There are people that might not be in good circumstances in whatever way it is. And I think reading is important to be able to connect, because even if it's a fictional piece, you're still connecting with the characters. And those characters were written by someone else. So someone else out there, some author out there, understands you in a way because they wrote a character that you could connect with. And so that knowledge and that character came from somewhere in that author's mind. So I think it's important that even with fiction, it's nice to connect with those pieces, with those fictional characters, with their situations. So
absolutely.
Happy endings are good.
They're the best.
All right. Well, let's go into, I guess, my fourth one. My fourth one is actually part of another series. It is not the first book in the series. Without a Front, The Producer's Challenge, which is actually book 2. And I would almost say it's like a sister hand in hand, those two books, Producer's Challenge and The Warrior's Challenge, which is book 3 by Fletcher DeLancey. That is also sci-fi. You could almost read like a hint of magic in it because of the whole like soulmate kind of, right? And I cannot remember the word for it now in her books. But this one, I guess, focuses on the leader of the planet, the Lancer of LC, Indira Tal, and a landowner named Salman Opa. So there's a lot of political intrigue. There's a lot of resistance to Indira Tal's plans for the new technology that they received from all the people that came to their planet in the first book. So there's a heated debate, and she gets a challenge from one of the producers to come work in the fields and kind of see how it is for the producers and how it is for those people that aren't warriors being catered to, or people that are leaders in the government. So she, as a hardened warrior, Indira thinks, oh, it'll be easy, and it will be an easy way to win the support of all the producers, right? So what she doesn't count on is connecting with a woman who has immense power, who has hidden this immense power her entire life, and the love that kind of develops between them. So I guess, obviously, from my list so far, science fiction has kind of been my thing for a long time. I've read all of Fletcher DeLancey's books now. She is a master of not just world building, but giving us those motivations and small details that kind of flesh out the emotions of her characters. And I love a story with a good Mary Sue. So I know some people don't like that, but I do like a good Mary Sue, right? The Rey from Star Wars, And Salman Opa is definitely a Mary Sue. So, I feel more so now that I read her most recent book that has nothing to do with, it's a different character, right? But her most recent book that just came out, and I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Outcast.
Outcast, yes. Oh, I have to say that might be my favorite written by her. I just think, but it wasn't necessarily my favorite because it wasn't a romance, right? Mm-hmm. And I think she does that really well. So, but Outcast was very well written, and it also fleshed out a little bit the characters of Indira Tal and Salomon Opa, and you see exactly how much of a Mary Sue Salomon is in that book. Like nobody really realizes it. It touches on it. It describes it somewhat in the first few books. But in that book especially, you see moments where you're just blown away by this person's power, right? And it's just amazing that you have, I don't know, I definitely read her, just read them all.
So for anyone who doesn't know, can you explain the concept of what a Mary Sue is?
Okay, so a Mary Sue, and I'm not going to lie, I had to look that term up after the Star Wars, the newest Star Wars movies came out, right? Because I had never heard it before. But a Mary Sue is a character that people think the producer or writer introduces that is just too good at too many things, right? They're just like that perfect character. You're just perfect at everything. And if you read into a lot of the characters that people think are Mary Sues, you see that while they might be especially good at certain things, they're just special, right? But you'll see that if you really read into these Mary Sue characters, they have their own weaknesses, they have their own struggles. It's just they have something, a power, a vision, a sight, an intellect, something that sets them apart from everyone else. And I think that Mary Sue characters are important because I don't want to read a book about just average, everyday, boring people doing nothing, because where is the entertainment in that, right? So I kind of like that Mary Sue character. I like to see what a powerful character looks like, a powerful woman in a book or in a movie. I like to see what that character looks like, what the author or the producer or the director put into that character and how they deal with the power that they have, right? I mean, that's a big struggle usually with any book you read that has a powerful character in whatever way that they have power.
And Salomon's just wonderful. I think, so I've read the first 3 books and then the novella Velmar the Blade. And Salomon so far is my favorite character in the whole series because she's just like, she's warm and she's kind and she takes shit from nobody.
Exactly. She's strong.
Yeah. Like, I love that about her. I love her strength. And, you know, it does take a woman who is as warm and as strong as her to be a perfect partner for somebody who's in charge of, I don't know, literally everybody there.
Yes. You know, it's funny because there's always a lot of chatter on Facebook, on Twitter about, you know, oh, I love this character. This character's badass and they're awesome. Yeah, they're great. And this character's badass and they're awesome. And yep, they're great. You know, those tough, like, just take no shit, kicking ass characters. But then I think a lot of times characters like Solomon, right, just kind of slide under the radar. And it's those characters that I gravitate towards. I guess they're not underdogs. They're just, what is the word I'm looking for? They're underestimated, right?
Yes.
They're just totally underestimated. And I don't know if that, I guess, harkens back to my fanfic days, right? You know, you read the Xena and the Gabrielle, which is honestly how I got into lesfic. It's actually how I discovered I liked women. So I know, right? Crazy. I'm like, what is this? Oh, these 2 characters are, whoa, what are they doing? Hey, this is awesome. You know, and, you know, so, but I think I gravitate towards those characters that are, I guess, underestimated. And, you know, I started with the fanfic, but I had never even seen more than 20 minutes of the show. And then I eventually watched all of every season, and I could see the progression of every season of the Xena show. The lesser known character, right, the sidekick, Gabrielle, and she by the end she could do everything that Xena could do, and she was that underestimated character. And I think I gravitate towards those characters that kind of slide under the radar, and you don't realize exactly how strong or how tender or how tough or how powerful they are until it comes out under pressure. So Solomon, definitely, I'm with you on that one. She's a great character. And also in that last book, the last book that she's written, The Outcast, she does play a small part on and off through that book, and especially towards the end, her ability to not just be a strength, but to forgive other people's, to accept her own mistakes and to face her own mistakes, and then also face and accept other people's mistakes. I think that she is really probably my favorite character of all of her books that Fletcher has written.
I was going to start that book in the next week or two, so that makes me even more excited that I'm getting to it soon.
The Outcast. It's not a romance. I think it might make people a little... I'm not going to give away the book. I'm going to let you read it and decide. It's different. It's definitely different, but I think it's an okay different because her world itself is a little different. So I'll let you read it and be the decider, but maybe we could discuss again after you've read it.
Yes, we definitely will.
All right, last one. Last one on my top 5 is Reintegration by Eden S. French, which I know you just recently read. Disclaimer, I haven't read the reprint of this novel, so because, I have not had a chance to do it. But I haven't read the reprint of this novel, so all of my knowledge and my love of it was based on the first edition, right? It's kind of set in the distant future. When at the time I read it, I'm like, is this distant future or is this another world entirely? Because it's just so different that it's hard to tell a little bit. It focuses on a woman named Lexi Vale she's a cyborg. She has cybernetic enhancements. She has some experimental mind reading implant that gives her an advantage, I guess, amongst the gangs that make up the area that she lives in. She's highly wanted by the people in power because she has this enhancement. She's targeted by a hunter, and she finds herself on the run, kind of with this band of rebels. Another character, and I thought this other character was important, but it's hard to say how important the person was. This Miniko, she's kind of on the other side of the fence. She lives within the city of Foundation. She comes from a place of privilege, but she harbors a secret from her, I guess, well-connected parents, and it goes against the code. The code kind of rules everything within these cities, these walled cities. I mean, they have everything they want, right? But they just don't have everything. So one of the rules the code forbids is same-sex relations. So I guess, I love this. It was a different sort of book, right? Half the world seems to be utopian with a dash of like Handmaid's Tale thrown in. And that's inside, the safe walls of Foundation. And then like outside, it's exactly the opposite. People are just like fighting for scraps, essentially. Inside the walls, you have every security you could ask for. You don't have freedom. Outside the walls, it's exactly it's the opposite. You have your freedoms, or you can do whatever you want, essentially, within limits, don't get caught, but you don't have the security, right? I think it's kind of an exaggerated reflection on society. I like it. Sometimes I like reflections on society. I think this one's a little exaggerated, but, that highlights that age-old debate on whether or not you should exchange privacy and freedom, if it's worth getting security out of it, or if, losing your privacy and freedom isn't worth gaining that marginal bit of security. So I'm just a big fan of dystopian books. I really like happy endings. So this one was a little sparse. It's like the first of it, doesn't it? I don't know if the rewrite was different, but it seemed to be like the first going into maybe a series. It didn't wrap it up in the edition that I read.
It didn't wrap it up in the revision either. Technically it's an okay place to end it. I'm hoping she does more books in that world, but I don't know that she will.
Interesting. But it was an okay ending, right? I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I could see I could see the book being open to potentially continuing their story. But I do like happy endings. So this one still, it was well written enough that it still made my top 5, and it doesn't have like that really happy ending, right? I like the thought that the characters railing against injustice, wherever it may be found, right? I like that the characters are just a little bit special. Some of them are maybe too strong or too smart. They have a little extra that someone else doesn't have, right? They kind of bond But I also appreciate that it's not just like a gay theme. I think it pushes that the queer vibe, and you also have some transgender representation, right, with Lexi.
Lexi's not trans.
She's not, but she in the edition I read, she came across. It was like, is she a male? Is she a female? I mean, you could see it, but she was purposely vague in her interactions with the other characters, and hard to pin down.
Yeah.
I don't think she's trans.
No, the way I read it was that she was a non-binary woman, but there are 2 other characters who are trans.
Yes.
Which was pretty cool.
Yes, and it just there were a lot of different things that the book touched on, and a lot of themes, a lot of stuff that went into it, and it was very well written. It was very detailed. You were in this world when you read it, right? You felt the same like panic, as they're trying to escape. And it stuck with me for whatever reason. This particular book stuck with me, and that's why it's in my top,
Yeah, the second edition is fabulous. It was one of the best books that I read last year.
I clearly need to really add that and sometime soon. So I would be open to reading it again. It was good. It's the only book. I can't remember if I read Without a Front, the Producer's Challenge twice, because I feel like if I read that one again, I have to go back through the whole series. So I'd have to set aside a chunk of time for it. But I would definitely read Reintegration again. It was just a good book, and if reading it again, I would love to read the new release of it. So, because you were not the only one. I've heard from a few different people that it was just amazing. So, it's
got a sexy new cover.
I did. I like that cover. It was very good. I mean, I'm not a snob. I'm not like I'm gonna throw her under the bus. I'm not a Brooklyn level snob with covers.
Or Sheena.
or Sheena, yes. But I do say, I will say that, if I look at a cover and it looks like, one of the kids came up with it, right, on Microsoft Paint, I'm gonna be like, I don't know,
Yeah, when it's fembots on the cover.
Yeah, that too. Ugh. But I will at least read the synopsis, and I will, if it's Amazon, I will always go in, and I recommend to every single person out there, as a reader and as an author, go in and click on the read more inside and read. It gives you almost an entire first chapter, okay?
Yeah.
Lesbian fiction books are expensive. I know this as a reader and as an author, right? And definitely go in and read it, because even an ebook, you're going to spend, for the mainstream fiction, you're going to spend $10 for an ebook. It's expensive. I agree. But go in and read inside. Don't just buy it willy-nilly and then complain, right? And there are some that I didn't read inside, and I'm like, oh. So now I religiously, I click and I read inside just to make sure, because it could be, what if you don't like first person, right? What if you just can't click with the author's writing style? What if they use a lot of weird words that you don't like? I mean,
or what if it's clear that it wasn't very well edited, that there's a lot of typos, that you're going to be mad that you spent your money that way?
Yep.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I mean, I write fairly comprehensive reviews when I'm reviewing at the Lesbian Review or anywhere else. But even still, I would recommend people reading a sample, because your tastes may not be the same as my taste. Just because I love something doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to love it. And the only way to find out is to give it a try.
I definitely agree.
So, is there anything else that you want to share about your journey or your perspective as a reader?
As a reader, okay, so I have a little bit more about my perspective as a reader. So I came out a little later than probably a lot of people, right? I discovered fan fiction, which then led me into lesbian fiction, and my first purchased books, things like Embrace Emotion, or even Karen Kalmick or Catherine V. Forrest, a couple of those early books. And eventually I went on to discover more authors and more books. And I really love the fact that the entire lesbian fiction has just boomed across all genres, and it's truly amazing, right? I love this. But I have to say that as a reader, I think my early reading tastes have really influenced which lesbian fiction genres I gravitate towards the most, because it's not just all romance now in lesbian fiction. And I think that's why I prefer to read the dystopian, prefer to read the science fiction and the fantasy and the speculative fiction, because that's the stuff that I grew up reading. And I love strong female characters. I love authors who have, I've always read strong female character books. So authors like Mercedes Lackey, I know a lot of people that in the lesbian fiction circles, right, that also grew up reading these authors. So Mercedes Lackey, she has included LGBTQ characters in her books. Elizabeth Moon has written probably my favorite trilogy of all time, lesbian fiction, standard fiction, whatever, the Deeds of Pax and Arian. It's a fantasy series. I have read those at least as many times, more times than I have read The Growing, those 3 books. And it's about this woman. It's not a romance. It's about this woman who is, on a journey to become a warrior. And then she almost achieves everything. Then she wants to become a paladin. She almost achieves her dreams throughout the series. And then she loses everything, including her courage, and then eventually comes back better and stronger than before, like a Mary Sue, right? And that series, if you like a strong female character written by, a woman who is known for strong female characters, The Deeds of Pax and Arian, that's definitely a series you should check out by Elizabeth Moon. But other women authors who write strong female characters, Tamara Pierce, Jean Auel, who writes the Earth Children series. People might have seen the movie Clan of the Cave Bear back in the day. So I like that because it's almost like ancient, right? It's not even historical fiction. It's so far back. It's back when there were still like Homo sapiens mixed with, I guess, cave people, right? And then last on the list, and I've read a lot of her books, Anne McCaffrey. She does write a lot of strong female characters, but there's some stuff I don't like about her books. But those were just formative female authors who I read starting at a very young, probably too young of an age, right? I discovered like my mom's paperbacks in her closet when I was, 8 or 9. Probably about 9 and 10 is when I got into Asimov, Robert Heinlein, which is not child appropriate, but my mom it was a free for all. I was like, by the time I was 11, I was reading, just devouring all the Robert Heinlein with his sci-fi and a lot of interesting takes on relationships and people. So Friday is probably one of my all-time favorite books. It's definitely in the top 5 by Robert Heinlein. And she is a badass. If you want a strong female character who likes women, likes men, likes whatever, anything really, Friday. Have you ever read it?
I've never heard of it.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, there are definitely my lesbian fiction tastes were developed, I guess not developed. They have roots in my tastes before I realized I was a lesbian or, gay-ish, I guess. I'm not all the way, whatever. It is what it is. Definitely mostly, But it definitely, my reading tastes were formed when I was young, right? And so that carried over. And once I discovered that there were characters and books written about women who like women who I connect with much better than all of these other books, then I'm going to gravitate towards those books, those authors, writing those genres that really appeal to me, right? I think science fiction, starting with H.G. Wells, and Jules Verne, all of those, when I was a kid, I grew up reading those classics, and those are our future. Those aren't just, you're just reading like crazy stuff, made up stuff. That stuff could never happen. No, science fiction that was being written 100 years ago is stuff that's happening now. Like we live in science fiction of the past. So I think science fiction is really important especially for younger people, to spark that creative genius within their brains, to give them ideas about what can be possible, what they can do if they set their mind to it. So I think that's why I really love the science fiction genre in general, and fantasy. Who doesn't love fantasy? Come on, magic, knights, dragons. I don't know. I like it. As far as for a reader, my reading influences, I think that's pretty much it for my influences, for the things that I love, kind of why I love them. Now it's different if you're asking, say, influences as an author, right? It's hard to explain because as an author, you're a completely different person. There are people that you look up to and you admire as an author, like one author to another, and you look at what they do and you see what's possible for you yourself as an author, and you try to pattern yourself up. Like, well, if they can do that, I'm going to try to do that because this is something that appeals to me, right? So, I mean, there are those, I think I touched on it as far as reading, right, with Fletcher DeLancey. I love Fletcher DeLancey's skill at world building. She has just been a master at it, right? Her sci-fi depth, to be able to write any kind of non-contemporary fiction, anything that's sci-fi, anything that's fantasy, anything that's speculative. You have to be able to go into the guts and write the science, even if it's completely made up. You have to go into the guts, write it in a way that makes it believable to the reader, right? Because otherwise the reader is just going to say, oh, come on, that's not even, I've done it as a reader when somebody's just pulling stuff out of their ear, just like, give me a little more detail on that. And Fletcher DeLancey does an amazing job. And then you have authors like Radcliffe, right? Radcliffe, who her character depth and her connection between her characters is phenomenal. She also is a master at what she does. She has a lot of books written, and she is a pro. I don't even know how to explain it. She is just a pro. And then I have other authors that influence me, I guess, for some of the skill sets that they have. For instance, Robin Alexander, right? I'm sure you've probably read one or two of her books.
Love them.
Her books, every one of them I love, every single one. And they're contemporary. They're romantic comedies, right? Rom-coms, contemporary. I don't normally gravitate towards that genre, but every single Robin Alexander book I love. And I love it because she has that humor, and it's so easy when she writes it. The humor and the romance, it's not just a fast wham bam, thank you, ma'am. She does a great job with the meat and the connect and the humor and the romance all thrown in. And I love that, and I respect that she has the skill, because not everybody can do the romantic comedy that great. I have tried. My efforts came out okay, but that's definitely not something I'm going to gravitate towards as an author. And as I go along as an author, I see more and more that I definitely will probably gravitate more as an author towards the same things that I like as a reader. So, which is probably not a surprise. And then a couple other authors that I admire and influence my writing. Melissa Good, who I don't think you see a lot of chatter about her. She did the infamous Tropical Storm. It's from the beginning, the massive Uber Xena Gabrielle story started as fan fiction again. She has like 14 novels in this one series. And then she's also written sci-fi, and her sci-fi is phenomenal, like surprising, because I never would have guessed based on a whole of her other stuff. And I think lastly, Jen Cannon, who is I think an underrated writer. You don't see a lot of chatter. I will say not all of Jen Cannon's books have a happy ending. They're kind of happy-ish sometimes. They're definitely thought-provoking, and there is a diversity of genres with Jen Cannon's, I guess, body of work. And there's just a quality of writing there that draws me in, like almost with, no matter what the book is, even if it's something I wouldn't normally pick up on the genre, it has a quality that I enjoy. I pattern myself off because I don't like to settle into any one genre. And I see that other authors can have this breadth of work that encompass multiple genres. And I see the possibility there that if I hone my craft, I can also do something similar, and I don't have to be pinned down to just one thing or another. One of my loves as far as reading, and I think you find a lot of people that love the lesbian fiction that also love the fan fiction. It's readily available. It's easy. Some of them are short, some of them are long. There are some like massive epics out there that you can read. And the thing I love about fan fiction, it wasn't just because it kind of led me to discover who I was as a person, right? I love it because no matter what you want to read, It is there. Do you want to read a medical romance? It's there. Do you want to read a science fiction? Do you want to read, something about your favorite comic book characters? No matter what you want to read, your favorite TV show, it's all there. Your favorite pairing, honestly, any pairing you can think of on any TV show, it's just there. I'm a big Supercore fan. Follow the Supergirl show. I have to say, I like the Supergirl show less and less every single episode I watch. They're doing a disservice in there's been some scandal with just different things where they say that they're conducive to the LGBTQ community, and they're not necessarily so much with the writing. I think it's more the writers that's causing a problem, and obviously the people that are giving it a green lighting these arcs, right? Uber and alternate universe like Xena and Gabrielle, classic Xena and Gabrielle. I mean, the Uber I liked, and I think that's where I really developed my love of fan fiction, because you could literally read anything you wanted. I've read X-Men, the comic books. I was a big comic book nerd back in the day for a long time, like 15 years. I've read the comic book fan fiction. So, the fan fiction for that. And I've even read Flash fan fiction with combinations of Barry Allen and Captain Cold. I mean, don't judge, whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't mind. I will say that as a reviewer, I don't mind reading male stories. So, but I think, I guess overall, my feeling about books, it's a lot like music, it's like food, it's like writing, right? They're representatives of like who I am. They're reflections of the way I feel or the way I want to feel. I can listen to a song and it gives me all of a sudden, like I'll have a story idea to write. Has nothing to do with the song, but something about the song will just kick off this like idea or this spark of creativity within me. But books and food are different than, say, music and writing. I think, when I write or when I listen to music, it's kind of in response to an inspiration. Sometimes I'll listen to one song and it inspires me to come up with a writing idea, or it will inspire me to like, oh, now I want to listen to this band. Like it just gives me a craving, right? Like having a little taste. Now I want to listen to this. So I'll just, listen to Pandora. I'll put that band into Pandora and I'll just listen to everything that's remotely similar. But when I read a book, it's a lot of times I choose one that I think is going to give me a specific response, which doesn't really make sense. It's especially true if I'm going to read a book again, right? Like I said, I've read some books a dozen times. And I think it's especially true if I'm rereading a book. I know certain ones will leave me feeling, I guess, a certain way, right? A certain something. And it's not necessarily the plot that I'm rereading this book, because I'm by 5 times in, I'm pretty familiar with the plot. It's more for the emotion that I know that book is going to leave me with at the end. Like if I'm feeling down, I'm going to go grab Fated Love by Radcliffe, because that book is that's also in my top 5. My top 5 overall, sorry, not my not the top 5 that I said earlier, but my top 5 overall, that one's in there. So I guess books are my comfort food. People eat food because it makes them feel better. They want brownies because they're depressed or whatever. Some people eat food, not everybody. I love food, but yeah, books are my comfort food. I think I like the happy ending because I want that emotional feedback. I want that response. I want the endorphins that are kicked off by finishing a good story and seeing that it's wrapped up and being happy with how it ended. I think a lot of people are looking for that, and if you can't get that, then I at least want a book that's going to make me think. It's going to leave me, when I finish the book, with this feeling of like, whoa, what about, what if, make me think and make me look at and just analyze everything. Either make me happy or blow my mind. So
those are good things.
Seems simple enough, right? Make me happy or blow my mind.
Absolutely. So Kelly, where can people find you online if they want to connect with you?
I have a website, www.katen-author.com. You can also find me. I have an author page on the Regal Crest website under authors. I'm also on Amazon. So if you look on Amazon, you can look up any of my books, The Archer, Book 2 in the Arrow of Artemis series, Rules of the Road, or the Fletcher, Arrow of Artemis, Book 1. You can find any of those books and find my Amazon page there. Those are the main places. I also have a Facebook page. You can find K Aten, my Facebook page. I'm all over the place. I'm on Twitter under WordNerd68, WORDNRD68. So you can find me there. But I will warn you, my Twitter is for a lot of reposting the lesbian review stuff and supercore stuff. So
also great things.
Great things, yes. The lesbian review is just, they've been amazing, both for me as a reader. It's kind of expanded my horizons a little bit, the books that I have been reading and reviewing. It makes me look at the review process a lot different, a lot more in depth, which is actually one of my goals this year as a reader, to do more in-depth reviews for other authors, because, you know, if I really appreciate this work, I want to show it, right? So being part of the TLR team has really given me this opportunity to do some of these amazing books and these amazing authors just justice after reading their work. And it's also been good for me as an author, you know, not just being a reviewer, right? My name is out there, but I've seen that some of the quality reviews that come out of TLR on my books. So, I mean, it's a great team. It's a great experience, you know, great exposure all the way around. So
we love having you as a part of the team.
I love being a part of the team. So it's been great.
So that is all for this episode. Thank you so much, Kelly, for joining me.
Thank you. It was fun.
I'm Tara. You've been listening to Les Do Books. Remember to email me at tara@thelesbianreview.com with your questions or comments. If you're an author who's interested in joining me on this show to talk about the lesfic you love or the trends that have you interested, please let me know. If you've enjoyed this episode, please check out the show notes where you'll find a Patreon link for the Lesbian Talk Show. Our patrons get exclusive content, and just a little bit goes a long way to cover hosting costs for Les Do Books and the other fabulous shows on the channel that are all geared towards queer women. You can find this and many other great shows by searching for The Lesbian Talk Show on iTunes, Podbean, or Stitcher, and you can find all of the podcasters from the channel on Facebook in the group The Lesbian Talk Show chat group. You can also join our Facebook group, The Lesbian Review Book Club, to talk about these books and anything else you're reading and loving.